Today, looking ahead, we have an admissions panel with admissions directors from INSEAD, from the Rotterdam School of Management, Imperial. Later on in the day, again, the US wakes up and we have the likes of Kirsten Moss, the admissions director at Stanford, Pete Johnson joining us from Berkeley Haas. So a very full day, and we hope it's proving to be really rewarding for all of you that are following us. One aspect of the CentreCourt MBA Festival that we're really excited about is the opportunity to give voices to the career services teams at the business schools. When I speak to many thousands of MBA graduates, they talk about the personal journey that they have been on. They might remember the odd strategy professor. I'm not sure what they remember about discounted cash flow. They always seem to remember the sort of support and guidance that came from the Career Services Office as they built their self-confidence and, of course, looked to pursue the next steps of their personal and their professional development. So I'm delighted that we're starting day 2 with such a fantastic panel. I'm joined by Tony Summers. Tony is the Director of Employer Engagement at HEC Paris. With him is Zoe McLaughlin. Zoe is back at London Business School, having formerly worn an admissions hat, and Zoe is now Head of Employer Engagement in the Career Centre. From IESE Business School in Barcelona, we have Mike Mascarenas, an Associate Director at the school, and Julia Vargas Marquez, who is the MBA Career Services Manager at IMD in Lausanne. So all four, welcome. Thank you very much for spending the next hour with us. It's a year unlike any other. Certainly when you made your New Year's resolutions, none of us could have really expected this. And we thought perhaps we'd just start looking at the MBA job market of 2020. Of course, you work very, very closely both with graduating students and even alumni from previous years. Tony, if I can start with you, just to sort of share a sense of what you're seeing, where you're seeing demand, where you're seeing perhaps certain industries have gone quiet for this class of 2020.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Greetings from France. We're all in lockdown, but looking to come out of lockdown on the 11th of May, which we're all looking forward to. First of all, let me tell you what I see regarding the class of 2020. We are so far seeing very little change in terms of how the students who have already secured offers and are taking them up, obviously, very, very, very little feedback in terms of an offer has been cancelled or postponed. In fact, we've had none so far from our class of 2020. Now, obviously, there are people still looking, as there always is. Some people move fairly quickly in the job search, other people take more time. We do have those numbers of people, but again, the proportions don't seem to be that much different from previous years. And the prognosis for 2021 is looking quite positive, actually.
Right. And so across sectors, it's wonderful to hear such a positive report for your graduates, Tony. Mm-hmm. Is that pretty much across sectors? Consulting remains very robust.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of demand from tech.
Yes, absolutely. Our three main sectors are consulting, finance, and tech. And, obviously we're not reaching out to Airbnb at the moment. Those sectors, our biggest employer on the MBA program at the moment by far is Amazon, and everybody's seen how much the worth of Amazon has increased in the last couple of weeks. We have, I think, over 20 students going to do summer internships there this year. Consulting and finance is really quite good. PE and VC is going quite well as well. I think obviously there are some sectors that we have all identified that are going to be problematic moving forward, and I'm under no illusions that these will affect recruitment in the coming year or two. But at least as far as HEC is concerned, perhaps we're lucky in this regard. Very little effect so far.
Right, great. Well, that's a very positive note with which to start. Zoe, from the UK and London, of course, you have over 65 nationalities in an LBS MBA classroom. So looking at a global market, but what are you seeing at LBS?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, to echo Tony, we sort of were braced going into this and sort of expecting the worst. And actually all of the big structured programs within banking, consulting, and the big diversified sectors programs are honouring all the offers that they've made. We've not seen any rescinds at all. which I think is, fantastic news. We have seen some changes to start dates. So some students are looking at a start date, especially in the client-facing industries, that's looking at more sort of 6 to 8 months down the road rather than immediately after graduation. So there are some questions there about how students want to fill their time before they actually start the full-time role. But the full-time role is there, so that's the main thing. I think, we are seeing a slowdown, obviously, in some of the aviation sector and some other things like that, but we are also seeing opportunities. So we did a big project a few weeks ago to reach out to SMEs and startups, because we figured they'd probably be a little bit more agile and also a little bit more sort of needing to fill this gap. They can't wait out a crisis, they have to keep moving. So we've managed to secure quite a lot of projects and roles from that sector, which a lot of our students are interested in, but actually has opened up some new opportunities and some new relationships for us. So that's been great. I think the critical thing for me when I'm talking to our MBAs is the fact that we are here for them. We are the employer engagement team. We're out there getting the insights, building that relationship and championing our students. And the key message that we're getting across to employers and that they're giving back to us is that they don't want to shut off that talent pipeline. They may have done that before, I think after the IESE, that happened in a lot of places. And I think they're just being a lot more considered about how they approach their talent pipeline. And certainly I don't see any big shut-offs coming up. I think there might be a few pushbacks, a few slowdowns, but at the moment we are cautiously optimistic for our graduating class.
I'm almost embarrassed to admit how long I've been involved in the business education sector. I do remember in the early 90s when the big consulting firms pulled away from campus recruitment and regretted it bitterly. They then through 2001, 2002, the internet downturn, 2009 financial crisis, they really stayed with you. That's something that you see they're still very much engaged with your school.
Yes, I would if I could just add something there. I think big picture, this is quite different from any previous downturns. What's going on in society, the support that governments are giving to keep the economy going. I think this is very different, and I think the companies are reflecting that as well too. I'm not saying for a moment that we'll be finished with this very quickly, but there could be a lot of pent-up demand in the coming months, and let's hope that things remain positive in that regard.
Great. Well, Mike, one of the roles that you play with the IESE, perhaps you can speak to as you look at what you're seeing at the school, is also graduates not just from this year but in previous years, because you do a lot in terms of the alumni network and supporting individuals over a span of their career, not just the immediate months coming out of the school. So tell us what you're seeing from a Barcelona perspective.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. Just to reiterate both Zoe and Tony's statements, at IESE, we have not yet seen a rescinded offer for full-time recruitment. We have seen some consulting firms give postponed start dates. And as far as internships go, I'd echo Zoe's statement that there are a lot of startup opportunities. We've actually seen that some of the consultancies and investment banks are moving their internships digital, but they are also guaranteeing full-time offers. McKinsey in the US did this, McKinsey Germany did this, ZS Associates in London, as well as Citibank, investment bank in London. So some of the major recruiters are making that very radical change. Now, as far as network-driven recruitment goes, what I do is support students that are coming to business school to make a big change, but maybe not in an MBA traditional way. What I mean by that is, say, the student that's been a lifelong engineer that knows they have a passion for consumer, but they don't necessarily want to go to a structured process. Maybe that person prefers to do digital marketing for a sustainable agriculture company in northern Spain. And what we really do is try to engage our alumni network, as well as sort of the broader kind of business school network as a whole, to enable that student to make those changes. I would actually say I'm seeing such support from the MBA alumni community in this time throughout industries. We have students or young alumni reaching out saying, I want to share my list of consumer goods companies or the strategy that I use to transfer from a traditional marketing role to digital marketing. We see more senior alumni saying, I've seen several crises and I want to, give my experience to the current MBA students. And then of course we see entrepreneurs, startups, and executives that are ESA alumni reaching out and saying, I know this is a difficult time. I want to bring in ESA talent to support them. And I think that this is quite common across many business schools. And I think particularly here in Europe, where there aren't as many quote unquote MBA rotational industry programs. A lot of the industry recruitment that happens in the EU happens in kind of direct to hire roles, which is why it's so important to have alumni that are engaged. And I think that's it's been a really uplifting note to see how engaged alumni of all generations are in a time where looking for uplifting news is sometimes a challenge. So we're very happy with what's gone so far.
Yeah, no, I'd love to come back and spend more time talking about those, proactive and influential, loyal alumni networks that you have and the difference that it can make. During the lockdown, of course, we're all eating more chocolate, and we're hoping that Big Pharma will come up with a vaccine even before 18 months from now. And both Nestle and Novartis are stalwarts of the IMD culture. But Julia, there's much more there. What are you seeing from your perspective in Switzerland?
I think for us, it's a little bit different because our program starts in January and it ends in December. So our active recruitment actually starts a little bit later. So the interviews take place in September. I would agree with my colleagues. So far, everything has been, from the recruiter's standpoint, we're moving ahead as planned. We have our loyal recruiters that have been, for us, we have company presentations in June and in August. We have our June dates already booked. The question is, we confirm dates, we confirm the dates and the time for the presentation. The only outstanding question is the how. Are we going to physically come to IMD or is it going to be virtually? For the June dates, it'll be virtual presentations because we won't be back on campus. But all the plans so far is planning going ahead as scheduled. I think the big thing we're hearing is, yes, some processes will be slowed down a bit. And then the question is, probably a lot more of the first round, maybe even second round, will be virtual rather than the physical. But again, for us, it's a bit early, if you want, in the process. But so far, it is positive to hear that, to hear the recruiters. I think, as Tony has mentioned, we've learned from the past that you can't just stop recruiting, and it goes across all sectors. Exactly, I've had conversations with companies in the tech sector that have said, in fact, we will most likely recruit even more people that we had planned to recruit for this year. So that's positive. And then I would just like to reiterate what Mike said in terms of the alumni, and then we'll touch on that a little bit later. But it's been an overwhelming response of support. We're here. For example, the 2001 or the 2008 class, they've gone through some crisis as well during their job search, and they're coming back to us and really offering, how can we help? We're here. So that's really reassuring, I think, for us as a team, as a school, and then for the MBA group. But I think that so far, again, it's a wait and see. It's being cautious. It's not just to say everything is rosy. It is uncertain, but so far our partners, the recruiters, have been saying we're going ahead as planned. It's just the how that's a question.
It's wonderful to hear from what both of you are suggesting, that individuals that graduated 10, 15, 20 years ago are proactively reaching out to your schools. They're not waiting for you to come to them. They're saying, how can I help? I'm looking for, talent. I know my school. So you're seeing a lot of proactivity from those groups?
Absolutely. I think before we had the lockdown here in Switzerland, and in one of the early sessions we have with the MBAs, I was mentioning that we were already receiving messages from alum, and one MBA in the class said, oh, that's true. I somebody from my country, my home country, that graduated from IMD 20 years ago spontaneously reached out to me. And I don't think that this person, he probably would have reached out at one point, but not as spontaneous as that was the case. So we're definitely seeing a lot of that. We're seeing classes coming together as a class to see how can we support as a group. And I think that's really great to hear.
Matt, if
Tony,
I could
put it to you that sorry, you were going to perhaps make.
No, I was just going to. Maybe it's nice for the people listening to hear this. Just to come back on what Mike was saying and what Julie was saying about the sense of community. The first thing I would just mention is the fact that the community, the MBA community, is like very, very strong. And what we're seeing is, you know, a number of students have said, okay, I really need to think about what if there's travel restrictions for the next couple of years? Do I need to think about home country? And what we've seen is our alumni in home countries coming to say, we are here to support you should you need that as an option. The second community, which was always very strong, but is particularly strong now, is the inter-school community. So perhaps not everybody knows that we work very closely with all the schools in this group today on the career side. We run joint career events. At the moment, we're sharing, companies are coming with webinars, with ideas for webinars. We're sharing that with each other. We're sharing curricula with each other. You know, in other words, say, hey, we're doing this interesting thing on stress management, or this company would like to do a presentation. Would you like your students to join? It always existed, but I think it's become even stronger. And this is again a sign of how this crisis is very much, you know, a community crisis. We're all in this together, and I think this is how people are reacting as well to the result being. I think that we're all we're very realistic about what's going to happen, but I think we're all calmer about what's happening.
Zoe, I put it to you that you know, history shows that you're probably better off with an MBA from one of your top business schools than without. Is that true, and why? Why is that the case?
It's a good question, and one of our faculty, I think, summed it up really well the other day, where he said, even though the cement might crumble, the bricks remain the same, so make sure you invest in your bricks. And I think, you know, it might be a bit of a cliche to say this, but, you know, you need to build a house with your MBA, and as long as you've got the right bricks, you're set up not just for your post-MBA career, but for, you know, the rest of your career, because the people on, you know, listening into this aren't just going to be in one career for the rest of their life. They're going to be in myriad, and the MBA is the right foundation for that. The skills, the networks, the learning that you will get from your MBA is something that you will revisit throughout your career, whether it's that first job or for the job that's 5 years down the line after your MBA. So it really is an investment in the future. It's not just a sort of a quick and dirty degree. It's an investment in your career for the rest of your life. And I just don't think you can get that sort of network that you get from the MBA. And we've talked about the alumni support coming through at a time like this. This is exactly the point of the MBA network that you sort of buy into, that's there to support you for the rest of your career. So yeah, invest in the bricks, that's what I would say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, of course, the schools always talk about that network, and it varies often when the times are tough. The true test of that. Mike, as you think about you know, the skills that you think will best serve MBA graduates as they face this job, like we've already talked about sort of collaboration, but you know, what resilience. What do you think are some of the characteristics that graduates, you know, really need to show?
Sure. I mean, of course, resilience, persistence. I think those are, of course, key in any job hunt, especially right now. But maybe I'll highlight one or two that people might not necessarily come to the top of their minds. One is respectfulness. Everybody is going through a tough challenge right now. All of us, everybody on this call, and every person you're going to reach out and network with. And I think in general, networking, it's important to be respectful, but even now it's even more important to show that you understand that this is a challenging situation. And if you're too busy to speak with me, that's okay, I'll follow up later. People really appreciate that when you reach out, especially if it's someone that's not in the immediate business school network. The other that I'd absolutely highlight is organization. We are living in a time where everybody is working from home, where you don't have to put on, you know, business clothes in the morning if you don't want to. And for many of you, your schedules become very, very fluid. But there's a saying that goes, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. And I find that very true, even with MBAs. As some of our second years are finishing their classes, and you know, the ones that are still looking for jobs are moving to a full-time job hunt, I really encourage them to structure their calendars, kind of organize their time, because if you don't, it will be very, very difficult to find that motivation, especially when we start to open back up and there are more distractions that can come to you. So what I've been doing a lot with our students that are still in this sort of networking approach is creating calendars and organizing schedules with them, because that is just everything in a job hunt. And people don't realize that, particularly those that are targeting things that aren't necessarily traditional for MBA post-employment.
Tony, of course, you've developed some very sophisticated workshops that would look at different sort of industries, sectors, roles, consulting, luxury sector, and beyond. How flexible do individuals need to be, given current conditions? They came into the program and said, I'm set on this career in the luxury retail sector, or I really want to pursue this path. And is that flexibility really just for the early stages of their career, or is again a characteristic and a quality that will serve them, well beyond?
Thank you, Matt. I just wanted to say that I would agree completely with what Mike says, and especially in terms of the respectfulness. I think it's very, very important to understand that we're all under extra pressure. Perhaps our businesses are under extra pressure, and reaching out to alumni and doing it in the right way is even more important than it was before. In terms of the skills that we look to develop in our students, actually not a lot changes from year to year. It's really a question of what we call the three-step process. First of all is knowing yourself, then knowing the market, and then matching yourself to the market. And we have different workshops and sessions that cater for each of those steps in your career development. And also with the one-to-one coaching that we do with students, we help them to figure out their plan. But we also, from day one, we're also talking about flexibility, and we're always almost obsessing about having a plan B or even a plan C, and always reminding students about this. I mean, no more than that can we do. We for instance, if somebody is very interested in consulting, we have a complete range of workshops, of sessions, of case cracking, etc. Like all the schools do. But what we're always trying to tease out is, does this person really, really want to do consulting? Are they motivated to do it in a real way? And secondly, have they considered the fact that it may be a step too far? That a lot of our students make the three-step jump, what we call the triple jump. They change sector, they change function, and they change geography. But that doesn't mean it happens for everybody. So I don't think there's a quick and easy answer to that. I think it's just to be aware of the fact from day one, from when you arrive at business school, whatever business school you choose, is that don't be blinded by what your peers are doing. Always stick to what you want to do, and absolutely listen to yourself and listen to what people say, because you may get a job in sector X, but if it's not what you want to do, then you won't last very long in that job.
If I could just add one thing to that, I'm an alumni of ESA myself. And I graduated about 5 years ago. When I look at my classmates and I try to put together a nice little MBA structure, on one axis is happiness, and the other axis is how long it took them to find a job. I don't see a correlation. Where I do see the correlation is how thoughtful the approach that person took to finding that job was. And their happiness. There are a lot of people that end up joining consulting because consulting is the first thing that comes, and a lot of people apply. But it's really important to really invest in yourself. Knowing yourself, as Tony said, is just so important, and trying to make decisions for yourself, not just what the quote unquote easy decision might be in front of you.
Right. Perhaps Julia, both commenting on what the other panelists have shared, and thank you everyone. These sort of insights are exactly what we were hoping to capture for a panel like this. Julia, you'd mentioned, of course, virtual recruitment, and over the summer, we're interviewing over Zoom. Mike obviously is sitting there in his pajamas from his waist down, given his earlier comment. Just even some pointers for being effective in this sort of virtual condition that we're faced with, whether that be how we come across in interview, or even the sort of online networking that we might do, and what you're therefore encouraging IMD graduates to think about.
Yes, so I think I would agree with what Tony and Mike have been saying. I think that for us, it's definitely investing time in the self-awareness. And for me, what I take out of what the situation we're living in is that it's forcing all of us, because we've been encouraging MBAs to really, we're going towards digitalization, we're going towards virtual, and we've been throughout the years, these last 3 years, we've been encouraging the MBAs to do that. Still, some of us stay away from it. I'd rather not do a Zoom. Let's just have a call. And I think this situation has forced us a bit. So what we are doing is saying, let's take the opportunity to invest personally, invest as a group. And that's what we have been doing. So we've definitely, now that we have concrete advice, if you want, or plans from companies that are saying, indeed, maybe our first rounds are all going to be online. This has given, I think, more motivation and more concreteness to our advice that we have been giving the MBA. So we're insisting a lot more and creating, the elevator pitch. Yes, you have your elevator pitch, but now let's do it. Let's record yourself. And it's not easy for anybody. I've had people that said, I've done it 100 times and so forth. But now it seems to be like an urgency. Now there is no, we need to be ready for it. Before it was maybe some companies will interview virtually. Maybe not. Maybe I stay away from those companies. But now I think it's going to go across sectors. So our MBAs have to understand, and they are understanding that we all need to be prepared. And what we tend to tell them is, if you're able to master and be okay with the virtual interviews, then probably the face-to-face, you'll ace them as well, or it'll be easier if you want, because the virtual, as you were mentioning, there isn't, yes, when there's Zoom, but you still don't have the same connection to the person as the face-to-face, the body language. There's a lot of things that are lost in the connection, if you want. So if we're able to conquer our fear or our whatever it might be, fear or anxiousness of the virtual part, then we can concentrate on really telling our story, on giving our pitch. And that's what we've been emphasizing for the MBAs. Again, for us, it's kind of helped us to reinforce the message that we've had with them for these past 2-3 years.
Right. Now, Mike has been plotting career progression and happiness. Tony has spoken to this idea of, looking at an industry, whether consulting or another, and how well suited you might be in that industry. Zoe, from the perspective of these top schools, of course, in the application, LBS and other schools will say, how does the MBA program at London Business School fit into, your next career steps? I've often wondered if David just made random selections of applicants based on the football teams that they support. He tells me not, but do you, as a career service, work with your colleagues in admissions to look at the career goals that applicants are sharing, and based on their background, share your perspectives on that?
Yeah, so I am still on the admissions committee, so I still review applications to sort of keep fresh on that, and so it is very interesting for me to read students' aspirations. I would say there's two things. I mean, the first is, we don't ever go back to that and say, you said you wanted to be a consultant and now you want to be an entrepreneur, so we're going to throw you out. So that doesn't happen. I mean, I know that people, the minute they arrive on campus, the serendipity of everything that happens to them will change their goals a number of times before they graduate, and that's fine. I think what we look for when we look at that essay is just some degree of self-reflection. I think Tony said about knowing yourself, and I think when a student says to me, how will I make sure I choose the right career? It's really about identifying the levers that drive you. Some people are driven by money, and that's fine. Some people recognition, some it's working with like-minded colleagues, some it's delivering impact in some sense. And what we would do in a career centre, in any of our career centres, is help students define what those levers are that drive them. And so I think the admissions essay is a useful first step in that, of an admit really taking time to sit and think, what do I want from this MBA? How will this MBA potentially get me where I want to go? And it's absolutely fine if that journey changes. But I think getting to that initial thought of, what is it that I really want? What will a successful career look like for me? That's what shines through for me when I review an application, that someone has really thought about a career goal and not just said, I want to do consulting because it seems like the logical next step for me. And you'd be surprised how many people actually just say that.
Right. And between whether it's 12 months in Lausanne, whether it's 16 months in HEC's MBA format, or 2 years with IESE in Barcelona, all of these students are going to be surrounded by an extraordinarily diverse, talented, ambitious, open-minded bunch of classmates, and they could end up doing fintech, or so as you are each of the schools, the other 3 schools, are you involved in admissions? And again, it's not to say admit or don't admit, but just to get that sense of self-awareness, or the coherence of a post-MBA career plan.
Matt, I can hop in there. I'm lucky, or maybe unlucky enough, still to be on the admissions committee for the MBA, and I've learned a lot of my time there. And one of the things that I absolutely agree with Zoe is that we do not look for perfect fit in terms of career progression from somebody who, from a case that comes before the committee. We look for consistency. This is really what we're thinking of, and we look for fit more than I've got the perfect background and I want to do consulting, or I don't have the perfect background and I want to do consulting. We do not interfere with that, because we've seen so many amazing changes that people make, amazing transformations on our MBA program. That's really not a good way to look at it. So I think the key thing to do is when you're applying for a business school, it's probably the same as if you're applying for a job, is know something about the company, know something about the school. And if you're going to refer to things that you see in the school, then make it genuine. Don't make it just vague and sort of like a cookie cutter approach. We don't sit and judge students on the basis of their career plans. We look at students and we look at consistency and fit in the program. That's what we look at, even from a career perspective.
Right. And Julia, Mike, feel free to add anything to
I would agree with that. So for us at IMD, we do work closely with our admissions colleagues, with our colleagues in admissions, and it's exactly that. It's not to say, okay, this profile yes, this profile not, but more to try and understand is IMD, for me, I did a couple of marketing fairs many years ago, and potential candidates would ask me, can you tell me why IMD has the best MBA program? My response would be, I can tell you what IMD offers, what our program is about in terms of academics, in terms of the career development. And then I would encourage you to decide for yourself if that is exactly what Tony was saying. Is there a match? It's like with a job, it's like with a company. Is there mutual match? And I think that we go about it like that. What we encourage our MBAs to do is when they come in, we encourage them to be curious, to be open. And by doing that, exactly, it's a group of 90 MBAs. So each MBA has 89 exceptional classmates that we tell them, be like sponges, take in as much as possible. And so, of course, their career goals or thoughts of, I thought I was going to go into this sector, but now I had never considered X or Y sector or company or function or what have you. So we know that they're going to go through that. So as Zoe was saying, we would never say, you said in your application you were going to be this, now you're saying that. For us, it's really trying to have them, for me, the most important thing is have them make informed decisions. Why are they deciding for X instead of B? Because it's truly based on what they know about themselves, what they think they want to do, and the motivators. Again, for me, I'm a strong advocate. I don't think anybody can do any job or anything just for the salary at the end of the month, or by monthly. For me, if you're doing something that you love, you'll succeed at it. And for me, what we get from recruiters is there's a lot of things that we can teach, but not motivation. If somebody's not motivated to do something, they will not succeed. So for us, it is in that spirit that we work hand in hand with our admissions team.
Right. Now, Mike, of course, now you've got me thinking about whether my career should be headed towards sustainable agriculture in northern Spain, since you brought it up. But you also, with a 2-year format, the internship perhaps can be very helpful in also providing an experiential opportunity for your students. And how does that often impact the paths that they take?
Sure. Just to add one quick comment on the previous question, I would really encourage people to be honest. I have heard, I've seen situations where people arrive at ESA completely lost. And I go and say, well, you know, what happened here? Let's discuss. And they said, well, I wrote what I thought would be good to get in. And that is not a good strategy. Don't listen to people that say that. That means they probably don't know what they're talking about. Please just do some good self-reflection, be honest with yourself. And if the school feels that you're a good fit for you being you, you'll hopefully be successful. As far as the internship goes, for us, we see a lot of people that look to make that triple jump that Tony mentioned before. And I actually saw a question in the chat from Yuvraj about you know, the triple jump into a market where you don't have work authorization. This is common. This happens. The internship is a great way to build that bridge. Now, oftentimes, an internship, you might need to leverage some of your previous experience. For instance, if you are looking to build a career in the Netherlands and you have only ever lived and worked in Mexico, maybe you want to leverage some of your financial control background to look for financial control related positions in the Netherlands for your internship. Because for full-time recruitment, what those companies are going to be asking you is why Netherlands? And it's one thing to say, you know, I really like Dutch culture and I've spoken to lots of Dutch people and that's really nice. It's another thing to have a few line items on your CV showcasing the commitment that you've already made to that area. And that's, you know, invaluable. You can't change that in an interview unless you have it on your CV. Now, I think an internship isn't everything, though. An internship is just one tool in the arsenal. And I'm sure, you know, my colleagues that don't have a lot of formal internships offered will say that there are lots of skills that you can develop in the course of the MBA. For instance, I had a candidate who had a communications background, and she wanted to be in digital marketing, which actually is quite analytical. She went and got several Google AdWords and digital marketing certifications while she was taking classes. Then she networked with her digital marketing professors and she got a great job making that triple jump with a visa sponsorship. So, you know, it's not just about the internship, but it's looking about this entire experience and what skills you can develop to make that double or triple jump possible. And as far, just to touch one more second on the visa sponsorship, it's going to depend on company, it's going to depend on industry. And most importantly, you have to think, why should they sponsor you if there is someone that is exactly the same that they don't need to sponsor? You need to have an answer to that question. And I think a lot of our MBAs do.
Now, well, I think this panel reinforces for me that part of the special source of business school really is the sort of guidance, advice, networks that you provide to your MBA students. Zoe, how do you teach those soft skills, that sort of strategic networking outreach, and who teaches? Is it a team of coaches? Talk us a little through career services and the teams that are involved.
Sure. So I think it is a fully holistic experience, and to echo what Mike said, I mean, the MBA is an experiential degree, and you get the chance to flex your leadership skills, your teamwork skills, your comfort with ambiguity every single day, whether that's through a club leadership position, working out with a difficult study group, whatever it might be. I think it sort of happens every single day of the program. Obviously, there are then formal curricula of skills that we deliver. There's some that will be delivered through the program, and then there's some that's specifically delivered through Career Centre. So we basically look at the life cycle of the career journey and deliver skills at the sort of relevant time to students as they go through their program. So we've already talked a little bit about sort of understanding yourself, but that's our first module where students come in. We have these fantastic visioning workshops where students have the chance to really distill down what's important to them, what their skills are, what their sell is to the market. And then that builds from there, and that incorporates the practical stuff, like how to write a CV, how to do an interview, virtual or otherwise, how to sort of network best at a recruitment fair, right through to how to negotiate getting a better salary. I mean, it's the full complement. I think what's critical is that the team is made up of people who have come from industry. So we have a suite of sector experts who've all worked in the sectors that they sort of continue to advise students on. So they're bringing that real market insight. we're obviously connected with the market. So a lot of our curriculum is very flexible depending on what recruiters say. So we have a recruiter forum every year where we harness all the feedback in terms of how our students have performed and what the trends are. And then we will build modules around that. So one of the key areas of feedback we got last year was that our students lacked a comfort with ambiguity. If they went to an interview and they were kind of given a slightly left field question, they tended to crumble a little bit. That may just be LBS students, but that was certainly the consistent feedback that we got. So we actually built a module around that, and there's a practical element, there's a theoretical element, helping students to deal with new information in a quick and positive way. And that's, you know, that's something we developed in order that students can literally go out into the market and improve the version of themselves. So I think it's timely, it sort of makes sense, and it builds on what the sort of the market tells us. So I think it's really practical and it's really real, and that to me is what sort of sets it aside to perhaps other, you know, other institutions, other programs you can study that perhaps that are aligned to professions and can give you a career step up. It's not the same as the MBA careers experience, I don't believe.
Right. Tony, perhaps either in adding to that, also to look at timeframes, because there is, you know, this point of graduation, but you know, HEC MBA students are then building a career for the, you know, 5, 10, 20, 30 years that follow. So how do you also factor in, you know, where they might then be 3 years out or 5 years out?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that it's really quite difficult for students when they come to do an MBA at HEC and at the other schools, is maybe to see that big picture. They've made a reason, they've decided to come to business school because they want to change things in their lives, they want to change their career. And also, of course, they've made a significant investment in terms of time and money, and it's probably incumbent on them as soon as possible to start working as soon as possible after the MBA. So we are always in the business, I think, of assuring them that the companies are looking for their talent. They're looking for their talent right now. For the last couple of years on the employer side, and hopefully into the future, we've seen a lot more interest in other kinds of companies interested in MBAs. We've seen companies in France that have not been particularly focused on MBAs in the past have become very interested in MBAs. So I'd say there's a lot of choice at the moment for our students, and that's maybe reflecting back on what some employers gave feedback to Zoe about lacking agility, the students lacking agility. Sometimes they maybe have the sense, well, the companies are going to come. So we are very much in the business of assuring our students that opportunities will come, and they do come through the MBA, and we're committed to helping them to make that change. Mainly for the slightly longer term, we use our coaches and we use alumni. So coaches talk a lot about the big picture. They talk a lot about you know, where you want to be in 4 or 5 years' time. And the other thing, of course, we do is we get alumni in from maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago to talk to specifically to the clubs, or maybe through the different presentations we have. We are all, I mean, I think everybody around the table is very committed to the long-term picture. Some of us can see that even more than others. But I think that what we also want to assure our students, and we also want to assure applicants and people interested today, is that 2021, 2022 should be very good years for you. And if you utilize the resources we have, you're going to have quite a successful time when you come to join business school to do an MBA.
Right. Julia, if I can ask you, Sean Meehan, the Dean of the MBA program, of course, talks a lot about the sort of leadership skills that you're looking to develop. And it's not then to say that as soon as an IMD graduate comes into the job market, you know, I want to be a leader, I want to be a leader. They're building those, you know, next steps of their career. So how do you ensure that you're matching the skill sets that they're developing and those gradual steps that will see them moving into leadership positions in the subsequent years of their career?
So what we like to work with them on is we like to have them envision a 10-year plan. Where do you see yourself 10 years after IMD? And in order for you to be there, where do you have to be 5 years from after IMD, and then the immediate right after? And a lot of times what we get is, well, I don't really know what I want to do in 10 years time, but yes, you know, maybe in 5 years I have an idea. And when you start asking them, surely when you decided to leave your successful career to come and do an MBA, you had an idea of why you wanted to leave that successful career. So we start with working with them with that. And once they have that, because it is clear in their mind, that sometimes they just don't think it's clear, then what we do is exactly working on that. Everybody has a different set of skills when they come to the MBA program. What is it that they need to individually work on? And it's true that for us, leadership is one of our flagships, so that we have an entire leadership stream, that we have professors and faculty and coaches that work with the MBAs on that. And it's trying to, again, there isn't one, for us, what's important is there isn't one ideal leadership trait or one way of leading. It really, for us, it's the helping them understand what is their leadership style. What is it that they want to develop? What is it that we all have to work out something? So it's really helping them with that understanding. And for us, it's really going through the faculty through the stream, the leadership stream, they work with them with that. There's a lot of 360, so a lot of feedback, a lot of group work, and they start better understanding the type of leaders they think they are, and then the type of leaders they're perceived to be. And then individually working on, okay, if my plan in 10 years time or in 5 years time is to be at this level, then when I see that exactly by working with alum, these are the leaders, these are the characteristics or the types of leadership that these people have. This is what I individually need to work on. So for us, it's true that given that we have a small number, 90 MBAs, we are able to work as a team, as a career development team, also as faculty, as a community, more on an individual basis. So what is it that you are coming in with? What are your assets? What are your liabilities? Because we all have liabilities. What is it that you want to improve? And then helping them individually with that.
Right. Mike, if I can come back to your happiness correlation, clearly that's stuck in my mind. I once did an index for Forbes on the MBA happiness index. If we look at, much has been written about millennials and now Gen Z. If we look at the careers that MBA graduates from top schools were pursuing 12, 13 years ago, admittedly before the financial crisis, some schools were placing 47, 51% of the class into financial services, investment banking, and others. It strikes me one of our viewers has talked about social impact, whether it's renewables, clean tech, all of these emerging industries. So perhaps a greater presence of that sense of purpose, which may also impact on the correlation that you were describing. How do you integrate that sense of purpose into an individual's career journey?
Sure. I think the first thing that you do is challenge them. I hear impact from my students as a buzzword consistently. What do you want to do? I want to do impact. I want to do strategy. And you need to really dive a little bit deeper than that, because what impact means to you is very different from what impact means to other people. And the type of impact that you will have in a consulting job, it's a great consulting buzzword, will be very different than the type of impact you have if you do social enterprise. The second thing that you need to work on is understand if that impact job that you're looking for is going to fit other parameters that you might have. I have a lot of students that would love to work in social impact, but when they start to do some research on the salaries, quite frankly, they've invested a lot of money, they have a big loan, and they realize that might be a medium-term plan because they need to make some money realistically. There are a lot of great ways to build a career that has impact. And what we do is work very, very hard to make you think very deeply. And I think some students find that very engaging, they are excited by questioning what they believe in and asking themselves to go deeper. And then some students don't. And if you're in this chat right now and about to start an MBA program, don't be the guy sitting in the back of the room in the self-awareness seminars saying, this is stupid, I know this already. Because chances are you are the person that needs it the most.
You can tell that usually they're sitting there with their arms folded, right? A question that we had yesterday, and there are a couple as we go into the last 10 minutes of this panel, you all adhere to fairly strict employment reports that you then share And then, of course, the media, the FT and others reach out to you for surveys. One of the data points that they include in their MBA ranking looks at employment within 3 months of graduation. And so the question we had yesterday was, what might that 7 or 8%, because typically your graduates are all finding positions fairly quickly out of the program. What might that reflect? Are they entrepreneurs? Are they cruising around the Mediterranean for a few months before they start the next steps of their career? And I think the bigger question was, should we even worry, to be honest? If 88 or 91% of the class have found a position, that already talks about the tremendous opportunities that your MBAs face. So what's the missing 8%? What sort of things, Zoe, might people be doing rather than immediately jumping into the next job after their MBA?
I mean, I think you answered that. They're cruising around the Mediterranean.
All of the Mediterranean.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think once the stats kind of get into the 80s, I think that says, the school has given a return on investment. I think the students that are we have a very high reporting rate. That's something that we think is absolutely critical when it comes to employment stats. So we try and report on at least 99% of our students where we can. So we're recording everybody. And so we know, when we know what's happened to the ones that perhaps aren't employed. But honestly, it's usually because of personal reasons. I mean, the MBA doesn't stop normal life, right? And a lot of people meet on the MBA and want to get married and start families, and that creates a whole other set of decisions that have to be made. So I think the high employment rate reflects the fact that the MBA is a vocational degree that ultimately leads to career impact. But there will always be a handful of students every year that make different decisions for different reasons. What I think I could say confidently, and I'm sure all my colleagues would say the same, is that is not a sort of for a lack of career centre support. That the support is there for all students, and it's just that some students are on a slightly different journey.
Right, great. Tony, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that one of the things we've seen over the last few years for a school of our size, so we graduate around 280 students a year, is the growth in what I would call recruiters who do block hiring, so recruiters who hire multiples of students from the MBA program. I think this is something like 60% of the class now at this stage, which is extraordinary looking at it maybe 5 years, but especially 10 years ago, where recruitment was quite all over the place, quite patchy. This is not to say that everybody should get a job, because 60% of our recruiters are recruiting in multiples, but it does say that for a lot of companies who come on campus, we know them, we know what their process is, we can exchange to the students what the process is. These companies already have a lot of alumni from our school in their companies. So actually all the pieces of the puzzle are there. And that's very encouraging for most students. The 10% who at the end of the course, I think it's actually less for us at the moment because the market is so good. That's partly human nature, and unfortunately there are always a few people there who maybe didn't listen to their inner voice at an earlier stage, and for that reason they're struggling, and they might still be thinking about a career in consulting coming up to graduation. Well, if you haven't done the hard work up to then, it's probably not going to happen for you. So that's the answer to the question, is to say that the market is quite good. We don't know what's going to happen, of course, because of the current situation, but the market is quite good. So not only just listen to yourself, but also listen to what we have to say, because we have a lot of good knowledge to share.
Your top European business schools on this panel, of course, have seen very strong demand, in part because in the last 3 years, the messages coming out of the White House, uncertainty around H-1B visas, and of course this year as a presidential election year, that noise might reach a crescendo, and it has unsettled a lot of international students. Micah picked up on a question that Yuvrab had asked. I know that visas, it's always very difficult, but just as you look at the European job market, are you reasonably optimistic about opportunities for international students that need a work visa for working in Europe?
Can I hop in? Oh, sorry, Mike. I interrupted. I just wanted to say that as far as France and the other countries that we work closely with, There has been very, very little problem or issues around visas. It's almost never used as the reason for student 1 being chosen over student 2. If there is a case where a company has a restriction on visas, we communicate that directly to the students. But our experience has been, certainly, at least talking about the French market, that usually the issue around a student getting a job or not getting a job is fit for that job and not because of a visa. It's relatively straightforward to get a visa for France. In fact, one member of our team just joined recently, and that process was straightforward. There was no way that the French government was in the way of that.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm finished. Yeah.
I do agree that I agree partially, I would say. I think with structured recruitment, consulting, investment banking, any of the MBA rotational programs, most of those companies do sponsor visas. If your goal is to go out into the market and find an industry job that doesn't necessarily know what MBAs, are, I think I look at sort of Northern Europe, Germany, as markets that might not be as familiar with the MBA model. You can get pushback, particularly if you don't have the functional capabilities that they are looking for. Now, the question is, when a company says, sorry, we don't sponsor visas, is that because it's just an easy way for them to say, we don't want to look at anyone that we don't find easy to look at? Or is it truly that they don't sponsor? Because I've seen a lot of companies make exceptions. Uber is the classic example where Uber globally will say that they do not sponsor visas for markets that you do not have work authorization. If you have a skill that is very in demand, I've seen some exceptions be made. So it is not that it won't come up. It will come up in certain recruitment processes, but if you have a plan around it, it should be very manageable.
And it goes
Can
back
I just add to that?
Yeah, Zoe.
Just to say, we always really strongly advise students not to sort of lead with that question when engaging with companies, because it is the case that companies can sponsor it. Certainly in the UK, it's very easy to move from a tier 4 to a tier 2 visa in the UK. It's whether or not the company wants to. And the networking approach has to be make the company want to. I sort of tear my hair out a little bit because I still go to recruitment events and hear students' first question out of the gate, do you sponsor visas? And of course, there's no incentive there for the company to say anything other than no. Whereas, again, like Mike said, if you've got a particular skill or a functional knowledge that is useful, if you've got the cultural fit that they'd be looking for, because you do have to be client ready in the geography that you're targeting. If you have those things, get that across to the company first and then raise the visa question. I would say no doors are closed until you close them. So it is just about how students frame those networking approaches, in my view.
I would completely agree with that. And what we hear from recruiters is they're looking for the best talent. If they're finding the best talent, if somebody's able to clearly point out to them why they would be the best person to come in and enroll and help them with their challenges, then the company will likely be able to go out of their way to find that. So it's exactly what you were saying. So it is make the company see what you are helping them with, what specific skills you bring in, and then the second part will be, how do we deal with that? And we've seen that happening. The recruiters do tell us we're looking for the best talent. If we don't go out of our way, then we know that other companies, maybe our competitors, will go ahead and do that. But it's for the MBAs to really emphasize and make that match. This is what I'm bringing forward. This is where I see I can help you. And then they get to the point where the recruiter might say, oh, really? And then it also helps the recruiter in positioning their request to the authorities. That's what we see as well, because then they can more clearly point out, this is why we need this person. Yes, indeed, they don't have a European passport or work permit, but these are the skills, these are the assets that they are bringing, and we cannot find them. We've not found them in other recruitment with other applicants. So, but it starts with the MBAs exactly being able to identify their key skills, their assets, and then being able to pitch them to the recruiters.
I have felt with the 3 days that we have at the CentreCourt MBA Festival, a little bit like a kid in a toy store as I've looked at all the panels and the professionals that we have. Obviously, I look forward to each panel, but I must just observe this has been fantastic. I'll actually suggest to John that we make it required viewing for the entire Poets and Quants community. I think how you've been able to articulate what you do, MBAs, the sort of career opportunities, and even if you want to get a job in the Netherlands, you need to do more than just say that you love pancakes. I'll certainly take that advice personally. In terms of where we go now, there are individuals, I think, in the chat forum on Hoover that would love to ask more individual questions to all four of you. So we encourage all of you viewing. The numbers have just gone up. Everyone has stayed from beginning to end on this panel. I can understand why. In about 30 minutes, we will move to the admissions side and welcome admissions directors from INSEAD, Rotterdam School of Management, the Asia School of Business, and Imperial College Business School. And in between, we have an IMD MBA alum that I'm sure Julia knows very well. Maisie has secured a position as a Chief of Staff at Novartis, and also an alumnus from Michigan, Ross, who very interestingly goes back to one of the comments we were talking about earlier on. She graduated, in fact, she did her summer internship at Michigan at Lehman Brothers. And within a week of going back to Ann Arbor to resume the second year of her MBA, saw on the news that everyone was walking out of those Lehman Brothers offices in New York with boxes in their hands. It's a great story of how the MBA has enabled her over the last 10 years to build a very, very impressive career. So thank you to my four panelists. I think the message of optimism, but also founded on the sort of skills that you're helping these MBA students to develop and set them in such great stead for their careers. Really, well, people are writing in now to thank you for taking this time with us. I'd like to add to that and enjoy the chat that you'll have with some of the attendees on Hoover right now. Thank you to all four of you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very
Matt.
much.
Thank you.